The Danish team Dignitas, although it's worth pointing out they also feature a Norwegian player, Rubinho, have won EPICENTER, which was one of the biggest events of the year outside of the majors. Absolutely one of the top 5, top 10 events of 2016. It had an enormous prize pool, $500,000, so half of what a major is now. First prize was $250, so more than double what you used to win for a major back in 2015. And you got to start right there when you talk about Dignitas winning the tournament, because they've won a $250,000 or more prize pool tournament. This is a distinction we make for like majors and other huge tournaments. And you look throughout the history of CSGO, and the teams that win these enormous tournaments are only the greats of all time. So interestingly enough, even though the old Dignitas, the one that the core between TSM and now Astralis, even though that team is one of the top 10 teams in the history of Counter-Strike, had amazing results, won 5 tournaments that were maybe stacked and had the same teams as majors in 250k tournaments, that team never won a $250,000 tournament or more tournament. The best they ever managed was 2015 IEM Dubai Invitational, ESL Dubai Invitational, where they lost to Virtus.pro in 5 games. Now, here, Dignitas, interestingly enough, winning against Virtus.pro in the final of this tournament, has, in winning this tournament, accomplished what actually that core of Dignitas never managed to do. Now, obviously, the core of the Dignitas team, when they're TSM, Astralis, they are still a better team historically, and they accomplished more than this Dignitas team has, but what a great start for this Dignitas team when you consider they only completed this 5-man lineup with MagicSpoy about 3 months ago, just over 3 months ago. And in the meantime, they've actually had a couple of tournaments that they did pretty decently at where they had to use AZ as a stand-in. So it's not even like over the 3 months they had MagicSpoy every single tournament. So very promising start from a team that I think is now one of the elite teams, one of the top 4, top 5 teams in the world, and I think is going to either win more tournaments or make more finals and make more top 4s consistently. So winning this event was a big, big deal. This is a very stacked event. I mean, this tournament had my number 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8 ranked teams in the world in attendance. So 6 of my top 10, including the best 3 teams in the world, VP, SK, Na'Vi. They beat Na'Vi in the semi-finals. I mean, one of the hottest teams in the world coming into that match. They beat Virtus.pro in the final, one of the hardest teams, in fact, probably the hardest team in the world to beat right now, with an amazing map pool. Number 1 ranked, they beat them in the final. And they even basically won pretty solidly, pretty big on 2 of the maps. I mean, one of them was Virtus.pro's Mirage, which is obviously pretty nuts. And the other one was Cobblestone, which is a map that Virtus.pro has been getting some big wins on in the last few months to make them the number 1 team. So it's not just the scope of the tournament they won. It's not just the scale of the number of amazing teams, the prize pool, the pressure, all that. Yeah, this all matters, but it's the way that they did it as well. Beating out Na'Vi, a potential world number 1, beating out Virtus.pro, the current world number 1, still the world number 1 after this tournament. Had a very solid group stage performance. They drew against every team, but they were playing a murderer's role. They had NIP, G2, Na'Vi. These are all teams that have won events in the last few months or placed very highly and have been some of the best teams of the year. No one essentially beat them twice in any of those series, and they were all top teams. Now, what's interesting about Dignitas is, and I'm going to break down how I model the team as I explain like why they were able to win this tournament, basically. So they're a team based on these principles. They have reliable firepower, they have tactics, which are solid and effective, and they have a deep map pool, which is really effective, and they exploit reasonably well. Now, I say reasonably well because they could exploit it better, actually, as I'll explain as I go on. So let's start with the first category, firepower. Now, they have these 3 players in MagicSpoy, Config, and Cajun who play different roles, have different requirements and responsibilities in terms of firepower even, and star power, but the 3 of them combined, I think, actually make up the best trio of players in any team right now in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Go to any other team, okay, sure, if they played at peak form, maybe Guardian, Flamey, Simple could be better, could be more skilled. But they don't play at peak form. Only Simple is at the moment. The others don't play at that same level that we saw earlier in the year. Okay, you go over to a team like G2. Okay, if Shocks, Scream, RPK all play super high level, maybe they can match it. Again, those 3 don't play as reliably at that high level. You go over to the Brazilians, obviously, you've got Coldzera, you've got Fur, you've got Fallen. Amazing players all in their roles. They're not at that peak at the moment. They're not at that level. So you look at Dignitas, I actually think in terms of firepower, they have not only one of the best trios, but the most reliable trio of any team in CSGO right now. So let's start with the person I consider the biggest star of the team, which is Magic's Boy. Now, this was the best tournament of this guy's career, and one of the best of an individual player in all of 2016. I mean, he was plus 90 differential for the LAN, and he only played top 10 ranked teams. He was, let me think, was Fnatic actually top 10 ranked? I can't remember that. I don't. Maybe they're not actually. So maybe that one's not actually correct. Maybe Fnatic aren't top 10 ranked. He had 0.85 KPR, amazing amount of kills per round, very, very impressive stuff. Differential's amazing. So you just game to game, this guy will be your star player or one of your stars pretty much every map and every series without question. The way he's developed since E-League with SK and over the year, I mean, the end of last year, he had like the odd map that were really good, but he never was an all-round player. He never had that consistent presence. Early in the year, he was gradually getting it together. And then the summer, this guy's just gotten better and better and better gradually. And then suddenly trajectory has just gone right through the roof. And now he's a top 5 player in the world for me. He's an absolutely amazing player. Very different style of play, but it's amazing to me that people who can acknowledge how fantastic a more passive player like coldzera is, who is absolutely one of the best in the world, and one of the best, probably going to be one of the best of all time when he finishes his career, how can they not acknowledge Magic's Boy? This guy's also a passive player, but he's amazing at it. And that's the thing. I'll probably make a separate topic or article about this one day, but people give too much credence to flashy, aggressive players, and they think that's the harder thing to do. And in some senses, it can be harder or difficult, but they don't give enough credence to players who are incredible passive players who just clean up and consistently get those kills, and what seem like easier kills, but all the time. Because if you don't have that guy, sometimes having the playmaker doesn't win you the game either. You need to have the few players who can be amazing from that role and win you the whole game. That's why you see, funnily enough, people like Device, funnily enough, not Get Right because they won everything early on, and obviously he's a super fan favorite, but it should be Get Right in the same world. Get Right, Device, now Magic's Boy, who get a little bit underrated by people, and yet people don't mind praising Get Right and coldzera in the same sense. It's kind of bizarre. It just shows how fan mentalities work, because these players are all fantastic in a similar kind of sense. So he had an amazing LAN. I think he really has become this ridiculous backbone, and obviously him joining this team is what activated them and took them to the next level. But then the other star player, the real 2 stars for this team, is Config. And what's great about Config is his stats are never going to be the craziest. He's never going to have the best, probably even in his own team, never mind the whole LAN. But what makes him really, really good is that, first of all, his skills are obviously extremely good. Both have very good skills, Magic's Boy and Config. Config's style is that like aggressive, fast aiming, just taking quick shots, moving around a lot. He's more the Forest if Magic's Boy is more the Get Right of like the stable, consistent, grind you down style. Config's that like aggressive, flashy player. And the key thing is he's a playmaker. And so his role in this team is to create openings, to take aim duels, to force the action. And what's great is he's going to set up rounds that someone like Magic's Boy cleans up on statistically, and he's going to be the activation point for that. And you need both of them, but in different ways. And so one of the key things is, the reason why his stats will never be super sick is because he's someone who is willing to trade getting deaths for either kills or map pressure by moving into an area, or creating an opening someone else can come through, or cutting off part of the map from the opponent. So this is a guy where it's not just about kills for this guy. His kills are very important, they're hard to get, but he's also creating more. He's got more intangibles that don't show up on a stat sheet, and he's clearly one of the aspects where Magic's Boy is the stable rock, winning them the game overall, but Config is creating the plays from which Magic's Boy wins them the game in that sense. So what I like about this team is they've got this 2-man aggressive defensive or aggressive passive style star combo. And who's the third star? Who's the guy who every now and then has a really big game, otherwise has to be pretty solid, as an AWPer, as a rifler, as a hybrid, when he needs to be, it's KGB. He's playing exactly the same sort of star balance role, not necessarily role in the maps in the game, as he did in Astralis, where obviously it was Device was the like passive, big fragger, guy who cleans up, and then Dupree was like the aggressive playmaker. Cajun B's fit right into his role again, not just because he left Astralis. That's ridiculous. It's because now he's got a couple of other young Danish stars who are playing a super good role, and now he fits into what naturally I think is his position in the game. And I think he plays that very well. And the key thing for him, stable, solid, occasional carry. Not going to be at the same level as those guys necessarily, but he's doing his job, and as a result, he's winning tournaments again. And now he's won the biggest tournament of his career. So moving on from the firepower, you've got tactics. Now, the tactics don't just come from MSL. They come from the fact that you've got a system in place. So, okay, you've already got players in their roles there that are an in-game leader's dream. Like a super good passive player who understands now how to play that style. Config's going to give you the aggressive stuff that's going to open up your T-side completely. Cajun can do a bit of everything for you and can carry on certain maps for you. And then you've got your core that are going to base the tactics around. So you've got Rubino now as like the supportive player. Now you've got Tensky gone, who I thought was a pretty poor player overall, but like an average support. Rubino as a support support player is amazing, because the key thing about him is he's very solid and his skills for a support player are good. Like in another team, okay, if you made a Norwegian team tomorrow and you took Rain and you took Jacob, I'd go, yeah, get Rubino and make him like the third best player and make him like a hybrid all-around player and say, no, he's not doing that at all in this Danish team. But as a result, he's skilled as any other support player in the world, and he's one of the better ones in this tournament particularly. Saw him have a very good performance. So add that into the equation, and now MSL, who by the way individually is terrible, absolutely, I think he was minus 56 for this event, like can't even get to 0.6 kills per round. Terrible individual player, but plays within his system and has everyone else in good roles, and they're all strong and has a good tactical system and has developed their map pool. So he's doing his fucking job. He's got a team where he can afford now to not be as good a fragger. He doesn't need to be, and they're still fantastic anyway. Now, the interesting thing about MSL is I've always touted him as a good in-game leader. I mean, I did an article this year, maybe I'll link it below, when the team got pretty good back when they had Tensky and they had Kirby, and they started to win Cobblestone, and they had like made the final of Game Show. And when all this happened, you know, I touted them as like this tactical team who were on the rise, impressing people. Now, sure, they obviously got a lot more firepower because their star player hadn't actually joined yet, Magic's boy, but they had Kirby as their star player back there. Different kind of composition of team. Although, interestingly enough, Kirby himself wasn't playing like some super aggro style back there. He kind of changed it up when he went to Astralis. So, the interesting thing is, I've always thought he was a good in-game leader, and I still don't think he's the best, but he's a very weird in-game leader, though, because tactically, pretty good. Understands how to develop a system, doesn't go to extremes and make it where it's like you have to have all these perfect flashes and it has to go at this sort of a timing and it plays out like clockwork. He has these basic setups, he makes his reads, and he just tries to hit the same things that he thinks makes sense over and over again. Now that can every now and then, that'll lead to a stubborn scenario. I mean, Mirage is a good example of this on T-side, where he'll keep hitting the same points over and over again, thinking it should work, but it isn't working, or a player isn't having a good enough performance that map, and so he runs into a brick wall. But that's only every now and then. When it's working, which is most of the time, this style, this simplified but tactical and shrewd reading the game style, actually has allowed MSL to make them a fantastic team all around and have good T-sides. And as a result, this sort of reading on the CT side is helping them with the rotations, and they've become really hard to beat. I mean, the reason why I say he's a weird guy is this. When you consider how good they are as a team, all their placings, these like 3 top 4s, like one a like smaller event. You look at their map pool, okay, they have a really great map pool right now. Fantastic, can let them match up with anyone, and they have so many options that when they go against almost any team in the world, they can always get either a favourable map draw against anyone, or a map draw that gives them as good a chance as you could imagine for them, pretty much. And that's incredible. Yet, in spite of that, he has this weird track record that I've managed to find a pattern of, where the maps that he chooses, most often, they actually lose. So, with Magic's boy in the lineup, out of 14 map picks they've made going back over the tournaments that they've played with him, they've lost 8 of the 14 map picks, and yet they've still made these super deep runs, all the rest of it. I mean, at EPICENTER alone, they had 6 map picks that they were able to make, and they lost 4 of them. So what's amazing is that shows how good their map pool is, but actually the choice of map that MSL's making, they don't actually win it that often, but they're so good on the maps and so deep that they can actually win the opponent's map in many opportunities, obviously. So this is crazy stuff when you think about it. What a bizarre scenario to have. And I want to see how that develops going forwards. And so, you think about how they were able to win this tournament. So their map pool is really interesting because in all the 7 maps, they actually, with Magic's boy on LAN, do not have a losing record on any map. Now, admittedly, they've only played Cash once against FaZe at DreamHack Bucharest. They've played Train twice. Flip side, DreamHack Bucharest, which they won on, and they lost against Fnatic here. So those 2 maps they've only played 3 times out of all the games they've played Magic Pro. So those aren't really in the equation, but even the times they've had to play it, they aren't terrible on them. And then the other 5 maps, they can go to work on. And depending on the opponent, they can have a good chance. So they have 3 really strong maps. Nuke, Cobble, and Mirage are really good. And the interesting thing about Mirage is, Nuke and Cobble are their picks. They switch that up depending on the opponent and what the bans are. But Mirage is a map they don't pick, and yet they have a really good win rate on it, actually. They've won 5 out of 7 games there. So, and one of them, by the way, was a weird loss to Godsent a while ago. So, The interesting thing about the Mirage one is that out of 14 times that they've picked a map, they only picked Mirage once, and yet they're winning on this regularly. So you can see Mirage is a good map when the opponent picks it or when it's their third map. And that's why they're winning series and they're getting very hard to beat and they're going deep in tournaments. Nuke and Cobble, they are fantastic on. Cobble's always been a strength. Nuke is one they brought in, if you remember, around the ESL1 qualifier, and they were really trying to emphasize that. And at the time, no one was good on Nuke. So everyone did sort of say, I mean, me included, like, you're trying to force this Nuke pick a little bit, MSL. Is this really working out for you, mate? And it was kind of working, it kind of wasn't, and obviously the rest of the players hadn't blossomed and flourished into this amazing unit now, but I'll give him credit, he's made it work. They are amazing on Nuke, they're pretty consistent on Nuke in general. I still don't think it's a map that you can be super godlike on and win like almost every time like you can on maps like Cobble or Mirage or something, so I still think it has its problems, but it's great as a little pocket pick to either force the opponent to ban or to play it and fuck with them in a third map or even a first map sometimes. So I think it's really important that he's been able to do that, and basically it's only them and Virtus.pro that have been able to show any true mastery of that map, Nuke. So when you get outside the three really strong maps, they have two solid maps, and those are Dust 2 and Overpass. Now, after you get past those Dust 2 and Overpass, they can at least have a chance against other teams. They're not going to do super well and win them that often, but they're going to be decent enough, and they're going to at least have an opportunity. And against lower teams, they're probably even going to be able to win them. Now, interestingly enough, there are only two maps they don't play: Train, Cash. Now, of the 15 chances they've had to ban a map first, they have banned Train 8 times and Cash 7 times. So those count for, essentially, they have 2 permabans, but in as much as they always ban those 2, but they rotate it. Not only do they pick, depending on the opponent, Nuke or Cobble, but they ban, depending on the opponent, Train or Cash. So this is quite interesting, actually. And obviously, since a number of top teams ban maps like Cash, now they're also getting a little bit of an advantage. And because they play Nuke, people have to fuck with Nuke. So this is what's great. This is what's opened up the map pool for them. And if they pick wisely, I actually think Dignitas can get even better at exploiting pick ban and start to win more tournaments. Now, the interesting thing is, despite this great map pool, all these strengths, the ability to go towards an opponent's weakness and to take away a strength of theirs, they've actually, not in general, had many win streaks on maps. They tend to like win 1, lose 1, win 2, lose 1. Like they don't have these great win streaks, and that's why they've been very consistent, made it really deep, but they also haven't won tournaments until now. Now that's what changed at this tournament, and that's what really showed me not just the consistency, but the grind factor that they have going for them, because they had these 2 little streaks at this tournament. That is part of the reason they won this tournament. They had a 3-game winning streak on Mirage. Obviously this was a big game for them. Obviously sometimes the third map. And they had a 3-game winning streak on Cobble, which was obviously key to getting past Na'Vi, who you have to be able to play on Cobble and beat to get a map off them. And then Virtus.pro, if you can beat Virtus.pro on Cobble, yeah, you have a chance to win the series against them, as we saw in this particular sense. And obviously they closed it out on Virtus.pro's Mirage, a very dangerous map, in that final. Now, in terms of the grinding consistency factor, another thing really impressive to note is you go back and you look at their losses, right? If you go to their top 4 maps, Nuke, Cobble, Mirage, Overpass, on all 4 of these maps, in pretty much almost every occasion, they're grinding. They're reaching double digits in their losses. So rarely that they're ever getting just straight up beaten up. They're just, even in losses, they're getting close to that. They're having a chance to win. They're giving themselves a chance to win. And that's why they're winning so much. Because there's plenty of other games that get to that point, and then they're closing it out, and then they're doing a good job. And that's an area where famously Astralis had difficulties closing it out this year and towards the end of last year. But actually, Dignitas is doing a good job in this particular sense. The only couple of really egregious like beatdowns I've seen them have were actually on Mirage before this tournament, where they lost to VP and they lost to... who else was it? It might have been the Godset one. I think those 2 losses that they had on Mirage with Magic's Boy were the ones where on T-side they just got nothing done. They got like 2 or 3 rounds and they had real problems. And that's the only times really they've gotten straight up spanked and aren't getting close to double digits. So this is also really impressive because it means when you play the opponent's map, even if it's their map and it's their strength, you're getting a double digits. You're giving yourself a chance, and sometimes you're going to get those wins and then you're going to win more series as a result. So this is a team where, as a result of their map pool depth, as a result of their core of consistent firepower, I've noticed a little trend that's also interesting, which is that superstar players don't go off against Dignitas. Even Simple, who over the last 2 tournaments has had insane numbers, he's absolutely out of this world. In my opinion, the best player in the world. Even he didn't go ultra ham against Dignitas at this tournament. He had Overpass where he went nuts, and that's it. The other maps, they contained him. He didn't do as well. In general, go and look. Pick out your 5 best players in the world. Go and look when they played against Dignitas offline with Magic's Boy in the lineup, and you won't see them having these insane numbers and dropping like super card carry performances and just dominating them. And I think part of that is they've got the tactics, therefore they have ways to hit you. and go away from where you are if you're dominating. They have the map depth to put you on maps you don't like, and they have this massive firepower. Not just one player that if you kill, you have a chance. They've got this massive firepower in the top 3, and then even the support's decent. That means that as a result, if you're some superstar player, you're really having to like go above and beyond if you're going to dominate, because you kill one of them guys, great, they've got the other players to clean up and to still get the kills. So this is also quite interesting, because I noticed in the past of Counter-Strike, you go back and a famous Danish team that was the best in the world in 2008, MTW Denmark, they were very famous as well for shutting down superstars. It was really hard to get a good game off against them. And famously, they used to shut down Forrest, who was in Fnatic at the time and was one of the best players in the world. The only player who could really get it going was Neo, who was like probably the god of the game. And even then, they sometimes could neutralize him, could sometimes beat him, could sometimes play him close. So this is another trend I want to see going forwards if it continues, or if the superstars can find a way to play against them. Because if they can neutralize superstars and they have this map pool, both in terms of bans and picks, that they can go different directions, this team's going to have a lot of international finals, they're going to win some tournaments, and they're going to make a lot of top 4s. So in terms of what this means for the guys from Dignitas, yeah, I think they're going to make a lot of top 4s. I think they're going to be making finals. And I'm going to go ahead and say it right now as a bold prediction. Next week is EPL Season 4 finals. No VP there, no Na'Vi there. SK Gaming is there, but looking a little bit weakened. Still very good, a little bit weakened. I'm going to go ahead and say I think Dignitas is going to win that event. I think they've got all the tools to do it. The players, the tactics, the map depth, the bans, the picks. They stop amazing players going off against them in terms of firepower. I think Dignitas is going to win that event. I think Magic's Boys is one of the top 5 players in the world right now. And I think this is getting really exciting, because I think in the next few months, you're going to see that ranking go up. So Dignitas is top 5. And who knows, whether they win more tournaments is not as relevant as the fact that their style and strengths mean they're going to be there in semis, and they're going to be making some finals as well. So by the next major comes, this is very exciting if they don't change players and they don't lose a player.